Welcome to Black Beat Podcast. My name is John Washington, and I'm the CEO and editor-in-chief of Flossin Media. And I will be your host for today's show, where we, as always, take an unapologetically Black approach to profiling the people and stories that are significant in advancing connectivity in our community. Today, we are honored to introduce Deshaun Hardy. Mr. Hardy is the minister of Highland Christian Center in Portland, a nonprofit organization, an esteemed public speaker, and in the footsteps of his father, the late Dr. W.G. Hardy. He is known for his dynamic ability to capture the audience and serve in leadership roles in Highland Christian Center, Highland Haven, and other local churches across the country. Welcome, Deshaun. I'm glad you took the time to come on and share with us a little bit about your story, man, and a little bit about some things. So let's just hop right into this, man, and get comfortable with one another and move through this next little bit of time and share some inspiration and hope with our viewers.
I love it.
Tell us a little bit about your background, Deshaun, your personal, educational, your work. Talk to me a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah, so born in San Diego, California. My dad, as you said, the late Dr. Hardy was a Navy guy. So he met my mom in San Diego. I was born in San Diego and moved here when I was a kid. Normal childhood, lived in Southeast Portland, which I guess wasn't as normal back then when I was growing up to live in Southeast Portland as a Black family. That was very, we're probably the only Black family in the neighborhood. And I don't mean the block, I mean several blocks. We're probably the only Black family, but definitely just, loving family. As most people know, my father, dynamic person in the community and churches. So growing up and always being around him and being inspired to do things as far as community wise and helping people. So just grew up underneath that and grew up and then, decided to, like anyone else in the inner city, it was drawn to things that maybe weren't the best, but then, found a way to navigate life and try to turn around, went to college and started doing just jobs here and there. And then took over nonprofit with my father, where we start dealing with trying to change laws around African-American youth and drug and alcohol addictions and laws around that thing. So one of the laws we put into place was stores are now licensed to sell flavored tobacco. And if they're selling to underage kids, there's a fee and fine and just different things that we start to see that we weren't getting the same fair shake in the African-American community. And so we wanted to make sure those that were there. So started out doing that. Speaking came natural. I was that kid that could always talk myself in or out of anything, so
Yeah,
was naturally what I could do. And, my mom would always tell me, stop talking to me because I could talk, I would talk my way into all kind of stuff. So got to an age where I realized that maybe the speaking thing, I could do something with it. And so just started, doing trainings and leadership trainings and mentorships and was really, really early on didn't want to get into the whole ministry church thing. I saw what my dad did and all the work, and I was like, that's not for me. But I guess the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. It picked up and we kind of went there. And so as I started doing trainings across the country, that kind of led to me speaking. And then churches would call and say, hey, I'd like you to come speak at this youth event, or I want you to speak here. And that kind of took off from there. So I guess I took a gift I had and kind of used it as something well. And then I live here now in Portland in the Happy Valley area. I have a wife and 3 kids, a son that's 23. I have a daughter. He works for Nike. A daughter that's 21. We just shipped her back off to school. She runs track at Weber State University. It's her last year there. And then I have a 15-year-old daughter who thinks she's about 35 already and spends all my money. So,
that's what daughters do.
That's what they do. And so it's a typical life and trying to make sure that in that I instill the same things my father instilled in me about community and togetherness and empowerment and all those good things. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, man, I do appreciate you sharing that. I see in your bio, man. What you know about them bulldogs?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah. You
know
know
that.
what? That was a great experience in itself, just because coming from Portland, and I'll just say it, where we're 2% of the population, and going to Louisiana, where it's everyone was black, and it was like,
Yeah.
whoa, the bus driver, the cook.
Yeah.
I was culture shocked, like, wow. It just was so. I remember being there, and I never went to the cafeteria to eat food. I was like, I don't eat cafeteria food. And a buddy of mine was like, man, you got to go to the cafeteria. Man. You got to go to the cafeteria. So one day I went in there and I looked in the back kitchen, and all was old Creole women back there just cooking
Yeah.
smothered pork chops and greens. And let's just say I never ate anywhere else after that. It was just all cafeteria after that.
Yeah, my daughter jumped off and rolled down the Grambling herself, and I
Yeah.
went down there, boy. It was only a subway station on Grambling, but boy, everywhere you get out there, get somebody kitchen, boy, you in trouble. You hear me?
Yes, yes, yes. Some good times, definitely good times out there.
So tell me a little bit, man, in your experience, can you share with us what you feel are some of the greatest spiritual challenges facing America today, man? I mean, in light of the fact that you tackled these agendas and some of these heavy lifts around the spiritual conversations, man, what is your sense of what our greatest spiritual challenges moving forward from what we've come through, man? Talk to me a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
it's been very interesting. This has been a very interesting past year, with everything going on. You had COVID, you had racial tension, you had politics and depression and so much going on. And so you look at it, and it's intriguing to watch, but are you also, in my field, like you said, I have to look at the spiritual aspect of it and say, what can I help to help people? And one of the things that I use, and I've always used, is just being relatable and understanding. I think, I grew up in an era where, and there was no knock to the pastors I grew up in. There were some wonderful pastors, but I grew up in an era where, the pastor was on this pedestal, and we couldn't reach him. And I try to make sure that, I'm just an average person. I have problems. I have good days. I have bad days. So going through this time and what we just came from, which has been crazy, and to really see that, I told somebody just the other day, if not more than ever, the church has to be more vocal, but also more present in this moment, because there's a lot of hurt people looking for something, and it's not our job to look down on anyone. A lot of people probably went to church where they walked into the church, and if they weren't dressed right, they felt, out of place. That's not the church's job. The church's job is to love people, show love, and then for those hurt and broken people, have a place to come where they're not judged, and they have a place where they can just have a release. And so you see so many people now looking for something. And in this climate of, politics and all the crazy, ugly stuff that's going on, and racism, you need a place where you're not looked at in those matters, but you have a safe place to, even if you want to talk, that, I'm not being judged in this conversation. And so I think that's where the church really, and spiritually, we need to go. But I believe also you have to be careful, because I've watched videos of other churches where people are using the platform to talk about, their political side, and, oh, well, the election was stolen, or, oh, I saw a lot of different evangelists use these things. And I don't believe that's the place for it. It's the place to really show unity and show what we can do as a unit. I might not agree with everything you agree with, but you're still my brother. So I have to be able to come together and say, how can we work together? And I believe listening is such an important key. So many people now are talking and want to get their point across. And I feel this way, and I feel this way, and I feel this way. But I believe listening is one of the most important pieces that you can have, and really find out what we need. So I think prayer, I'm a firm believer in prayer, and whatever it is you meditate, whatever you may have, but I take ample time a day to really get my thoughts to myself, to really not only pray for myself, but just for people I don't even know, or just for the country, or just for, all the racism and hate and hatred going around. So I believe it's just time to really start showing a lot of more love. I think we need that.
Man, when you speak about that word love, I mean, how did you, as such a young man, and knowing the challenges of your father and your forefathers and your grandfather, your great grandfather, all that,
Yeah.
how was you able to arrive, man? Because I'm just curious at this point to this understanding of love and being such a young cat, and knowing the challenges and those types of things. Tell me a little bit, man. How'd you arrive there? I mean, have family, kids, all that.
Yeah, it's a process. It's a really big process. One of the things I've always used as a staple, and I speak it and preach it everywhere I go, is a term of protecting your peace. And how do you protect your peace? And what does that look like? And for me, that looks like I'm very critical on what I allow to even be in my circle or to affect my peace. I'm critical of what I listen to. I'm critical who I let speak to me, because there's so many people or so many things that can get to a point to where it can interrupt your peace. And once you're interrupted peacefully, then you start to react off emotions. And emotions can be good, but they can be very dangerous when you're reacting off of them, because you're looking, you're just upset. So I've learned at an early age to really protect my peace, but own who I am and have confidence in who I am. And knowing that even though we might, like I said earlier, we might not have the same views on everything, I can still love you because that's just who I am. I think it does much more better. They always say, I think there's a verse in the Bible that says when two people are arguing, you don't know who the fool is. You walk up and see two people arguing in the corner. You don't know which one's the fool. You know who's right. You don't know who's wrong. They just both, you just looking like, man, they both look foolish. And so I think understanding that the more you share love and the more you share compassion, you get so much more farther in that, right? I think my grandma would always say, you catch more bees with honey than you do vinegar, right? The old saying is just like, how do you love on people and meet people at their level? I always try to make sure whoever I meet, I make sure that they feel important, they feel cared for, they feel loved, and that I'm not no better than, or they're no less than who I am, no matter where they're at. And so I learned that earlier on with my father, because he was magnificent at making people feel welcomed and making people. I remember, he walking in a room and everybody knew him, but he would stop and talk to each individual person and give them that moment of time. And I remember him looking at me saying, you have to share your time with people to make them feel that you really care. It has to be genuine. And I think that's the key, of just having a genuine care for people. So at my age, I kind of got onto it quickly and learned that it was less stressful to be mad or back and forth and drama, that it was more better just to show people compassion and love. And if they don't like it, they just don't like it. But, hey, I still gonna get love from me. So I think that's important.
Man, you're quite a fascinating young man. And when you think about, most young men, I mean, we all have children, and we raised a heck of a lot of them. And I happen to have had the opportunity to meet and know your father.
Yes, sir.
And I would agree with you about that part, about he was definitely a bright beacon in the room. For a little guy, he tends to, he round up a few things, And in fact, I remember the first time or the second time I met him in a white church in Sailor.
Wow,
And that was the first time I ever seen this brother, man. And then, and then from that point on, we would bump into each other in these different political arenas and stuff. Right. And it was always about respect, man. Yeah. But, when you think about the son of the father and the gifts, it's a rare occasion that the father could be so proud to have his son follow in his footsteps.
Yeah.
And to have inherited some of the gifts that he had that distinguished him, but you get those gifts at an earlier age and then you carry them forward.
Right.
Has you had any struggles with that one, man? I mean, in terms of, you didn't come out the womb as, a gifted child, but some of them do, you know what I'm saying? But what were some of your struggles as a young man, trying to grasp some of this complicated existence, man, which is to some degree conflicted, because, we have enough reasons to hate.
Yeah.
Right? So how would a young man like yourself be so good? And not the sake of being redundant about that, was there some difficulty in you arriving to the guy that you are sitting here today? And, what was some of those challenges?
Yeah, it's a process. The guy that you see now, it was a work in process, and still a work in process, and something that having to evolve. I really believe in evolving and not being stagnant. I believe when you become stagnant, you almost cut off anything that can be for yourself. When you get comfortable and say, well, I've reached this and I'm good, I think you cut off anything that can be better. I mean, I had to get to a point. I mean, I tell people all the time, it was never easy having a father who I had and coming up underneath those footsteps and that shadow. That's difficult in itself. And so, you look at what he did and what he accomplished. And I always go back to a conversation we had maybe a couple months before he passed. And he was, we were in the office and he said, hey, you're going to be a good leader one day and you're going to be great and you're going to do a lot of great things. And I was like, man, I said, those are some big shoes to fill. And he didn't answer. He walked to the back. He put on his overcoat. He put on his hat. He walked to the door, about to go to the car, and he turned around and said, but your feet will grow. And I said, huh? He said, yeah, they're big shoes to fill, but your feet will grow. And what that told me was there was confidence in that you'll grow. That, don't try to fit the shoe now, but you'll grow. But what he also always instilled in me and what I learned for myself is I'm not my father. There's pieces of me that I took from my father. There's sometimes I speak places, people say, hey, you sound like him, or you're energetic like him. And there are those pieces. That's what I grew up seeing. But I became really comfortable in being Deshaun and knowing what Deshaun is really good at. I can't take all of the gifts that my dad had because I don't have some of those gifts. But vice versa, there's some gifts that I probably have that he didn't have. And so understanding where I'm good at and being comfortable with not saying I'm trying to be my father, but I'm trying to be Deshaun. I told people when he passed, I said, I'm not only, they're like, oh, you're carrying his legacy. And I said, yeah, I want his legacy to live on. But I said, actually, right now, what I'm doing is building my own legacy and learning from what he taught me to help build my own legacy, because there can only be one Pastor W.G. Hardy Jr. And he's passed. I can't be him, but there's only one Deshaun Hardy as well. And so I learned that it's better for me to embrace myself, embrace my gifts, embrace what I have and perfect it and be comfortable with it. But the struggle is always there because, doubt comes in, of course, and am I doing this right? Should I be doing this? How should I do this? You have people that will always look at you and want you to be your father. And I'm saying, no, and so it's understanding one of my biggest traits is understanding I'm comfortable in being me. And yes, I take pieces from my father and pieces of what I learned, but I take pieces from a lot of people I meet and a lot of things I learned and created what you see now. And it's still evolving to be something there. So it's really ownership in yourself and loving yourself and understanding that, in my case, I come from a father that was prolific and everyone knew him, but what am I going to do? And yes, he left me, great resources and great things, but now I'm saying, okay, now how do I plant and create my legacy where people know me? And I think that's my one of the, and I'll end with this, one of the greatest things I try to do is when I meet people for the first time and they say, hey, oh, you're Pastor Hardy's son. I say, yes. My goal is the second time they meet me, it's no longer I'm Pastor Hardy's son, is, oh, you're Deshaun. Because now, yes, my dad opened that door for me to go through, but now I want to solidify who I am because I do ride on those coattails of my father, but I want to also be my own self, especially as a man. I want to be my own man. So it is a struggle, but it's something that I've learned to cope with.
Yeah, that's wonderful, man, to hear that story, because I really was appreciative. But, you use the word navigate and, challenges. And I love the fact that you're a thinking man, as it appears. So then now apply the same similar formula, in the reality of the present day climate that we're in.
Yeah.
And as much as I'd like to believe that this virus to some degree was God sent, in light of the political in light of the day, right? Right. I always said, boy, it took an act of God to get this shit changed. I mean, this stuff changed. You know what I'm saying? So, but in light of those changes and difficult maneuvering and standard, obviously the church has been affected in the light of CV-19, COVID-19.
Yeah.
How have y'all been dealing? I mean, what is there's two parts in this question. What is the conversation in light of the type of racist realities that sort of revealed themselves again over the last year, which we all knew didn't go nowhere. It was somewhere laying under a rock, but somebody, this man kicked that rock and let them all out.
Right? All out. Yep.
Yeah. So in light of all that, and then you have racism, the social unrest, and then of course you have the CV-19, the coronavirus that's affecting. So the church as a community and as a congregative reality, how have you been affected? And how is your church? And what's the conversation you hear in amongst your congregation? What
Yeah,
are some of those things? Could you share with the listeners
yeah,
some of the
yeah,
experiences that
yeah.
you've had?
Yeah, I will. It's been an interesting time for the church, and so I'll lay a little bit of foundation. So when my father was pastoring Highland, I worked there, and then when he passed, I stayed for about a year after he passed. I've now transitioned, and I'm now at Emmanuel Temple with Bishop Wells, who's now pastor. So I'm working same roles, but just kind of God moves you places, and that's what happens. But to answer that question, the church has been affected, and it's been a good but bad time in this climate. And I say that why? With COVID-19, we'll start there. You shut everything down, right? Everything's shut down. My wife's a vice principal of a school. She's working from home and no kids in the school. Everything has changed. And so you have all these changes. And so with that, the church closed down. So now you have to figure out, how do you still create and reach those people that probably need church more than ever right now, or a place more than ever to kind of release, right? And how do you do it? And you can't have them in the building, and you can't this, and things are always changing. And so one of the great things that I learned early on working in our church is when my father was pastoring, we had a live stream service already before COVID. He had those in place, so when people traveled on vacation, if they wanted to still get church, they could get church. Or if someone's sick, they could still turn on and see church. So I was very familiar already with the aspect of how to create a social media type of live stream service, which really came in handy again, because when COVID hit, I had a lot of people, a lot of churches reach out to me saying, hey, you guys have already been doing this for years. What equipment do I need? Can you help me set up my system? Can you do this? And so that turned into a project as well. So what we're doing at church now is we give people a weekly Bible study on Thursdays, which is through like a Facebook type platform. And then we also do a service on Sundays where we have a couple Facebook and other platforms that we do. It's a live recording, but there's no audience. There's only, I think the churches now, they're saying we have 100 people. We're nowhere near having 100 people in there with everyone. I think it's more like 20, 25. People are still a little leery, and I understand it, of coming into those spaces. But I think the church, what we are doing is trying to make sure we do a lot of Zoom calls on Saturday with membership, trying to check in with membership, or having conversations or breakout groups, because we're trying to find out, how do we still stay connected to the people during this moment? You have people trapped in their homes, especially you look at some of your elderly people that are too nervous to even go out because they're at high risk. And so they're saying, I don't even want to go to the corner store. So how do we get it there? So, we found ways to make sure that we connect with membership, connect with people, because in this moment, I think people need connection more than ever. And then you add in the racial aspect of it, and it gets even worse, because now you're battling two monsters. And so how does the church, like you asked, how do we play a part in that? And I believe the church has to play an important part, and we try to play an important part, not only with race, and not only with COVID, but also with racial situations. Because if you look at it, when it comes to race, people are looking, you look at Dr. Martin Luther King, who was a preacher himself, and he used the platform, he used the church to help move itself forward, to get the initiatives of what he needed to get. And I believe the church can't remain silent in these moments of racism, especially the Black church. We cannot remain silent, because people are looking for something. And as you can see, this year it's been racial unrest. People are upset. People are not happy with outcomes. And if the church remains silent, then you kind of feel almost abandoned, because you feel like, well, if anybody should stand up, it's the church I go to. So
Hallelujah. Yeah.
About anything. And so that's been my big thing. Like, yeah, Jesus, the Bible teaches us Jesus loves everyone. We do this, but it also teaches us to have respect for one another. And so us as Black people, if we're not having respect, if we're not getting the respect, then it's our job to then do what we need to do to get the respect. And if that means, if we have to march down the street, or if we have to sit in those offices, I always tell people, everyone has a role. Right. And everyone should play their role. There's some people that can march all day long, and that's wonderful. We need it. But then fortunately for me, I've been able to march and speak at marches, but I also get to sit at some of those big tables and say, hey, this is what we need. But when I'm talking, I'm not talking for Deshaun. I'm trying to talk for the community. Hey, We need this. But how do I do that? I make sure I'm attached to the community to really know what the community needs, because I don't want to go in there to saying what I want. I got to see what does the community really need? And that's where the church has been so detrimental, because it's almost a melting pot of people coming together where you can really gauge what people need. Like, what are you seeing? What is your stressor? Why is this irritating you? What's happened to you? And so the church, if more than ever, needs to be more vocal and stay vocal when it comes to these moments, especially of COVID and really of the social injustices, making sure that we're at the front line. Because back in the day, like I said, those were churches and people. I read stories of the marches back in the day, and when they would need to sleep and eat, it was the churches that made food and put cots out for those people to sleep and eat and do that. And so the church can't. I was telling a pastor friend of mine that's back east. I said, one thing that's kind of been unsettling for me with some of the churches is that I believe that in the moment of COVID, the churches, since they didn't have to go into the building, they felt the need that they could kind of get lackadaisical and lax off. And really, when this is when we need you even more, because not only is there COVID, not only is there, I think someone said it best. They used, I think a good friend of mine said it, Sam said, we're not only facing the equivalent of the Spanish flu, the Great Depression, and civil rights all in 1 year, right? Civil rights all in 1 year. Like, they had theirs separate. Civil rights was 1 year, and Spanish flu. We're facing all that in 1 year and facing it all. So it's like, if anything, the church can't be lax now. We have to be even more vocal. How do we help people? How do we feed people? How do we clothe people? How do we help, if people need help with bills and rent? How do we do these things? Because we have to be a community that the church is meant to be a beacon of light in the community.
Yeah, man, right on, man. And woo, boy, you breathing? Yeah. Because it's definitely is a mental juggler's act. You have to, and then trying to align the spirit and then staying aligned with all of that. Mm-hmm. And somehow or another delivering a message that reinforces hope and strength and the will to want to advance and move forward.
Yeah.
So obviously the church, if it's in its downtime, and that has been hit financially to some degree. Yeah. And in this climate, were you able to was there any assistance or support you guys were able to reach out and get in the CV-19 time for it to help you guys?
Well, I know. So for the church itself, I can speak a little bit towards the church. I don't know exactly. I know the church was in a good position already, and so that was helpful. And to be honest, church-wise, the membership has really still continued giving and still continue trying to put forth. I believe this. If when someone gives, and I'm this way as well. If I give, I want to see where my giving is going to. I don't want to see that. And when we hear about those, and they're still relevant today, you hear about those preachers and pastors that give, but they drive the big car and they wear the nicest suit, but the rest of the church is nothing. I don't believe in that. I believe that if I give, that I should be able to see where I'm giving to. So if you say we're giving to feed the homeless, then I need to be able to see that we feeding the homeless, right? You can't just tell me that we feeding the homeless. I never see us. And so one of the things we've been very adamant is being vocal and being transparent on, hey, we're using this to feed this. So the church has fed people during this time. We've helped with rent assistance during this time. So we've been in a good place. But then when you jump over to my business side, as far as like speaking, of course, traveling halted. So for me, that was a big part of of what I did was to travel and speak. And so when traveling halted, I went on that in March around that time. There was a few things I already had on the calendar that I had to cancel because of that and go into that. And so just, then things start to pick up. I do a lot more speaking over Zoom now, which is great, but it was just finding those things. I know that I was very proud of and still proud of the, the Organ Cares.
Right.
Yeah. I think that, I hate and still hate to see some of the tribulations they're having to go through because people don't feel like us as Black people should get anything and just to read. And I like to read stuff and get my information. So, to read into some of that and see some of those comments, it was just like, it shows, like you said, racism was never gone. It just was sitting like a little beehive waiting for someone to aggravate it. Yeah. And so I think for me, thankfully for me, also run a nonprofit, which is state funded, and that's still been thriving. So I was able to actually, I told somebody the other day, I've been able to do a lot more for people in this climate than before. And I think that's been my goal of really just making sure to reach out. But I know a lot of friends and a lot of businesses and a lot of people that really benefited from the Oregon Cares. And I even applied and built it for myself because of, the traveling piece. But I know that it was detrimental to people, especially African American people, where our businesses were taking a huge hit, and our people were taking a huge hit. And and if you look at the stats, it says that in the African American community, we're at a higher level of getting COVID than other communities, and all those different things that play a fact. And hearing, and like I said, and being connected to the community and hearing the stories of people struggling to pay rent, struggling to feed families, struggling to, have lost their jobs, no more income, and trying to figure things out. I believe that those are great things. And there's still more work to do. Like I said, there's still people out there still struggling, but I believe there's been some great resources. The church itself was able to, I don't know the exact name of the program, but we were able to give out Visa cards to families that were able to sign up.
From the Portland housing. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. And we're able to do things like that. So we've tried to really utilize these programs to really help make sure that we're helping our community. And that's the key word, make sure we're helping, the community, and making sure that they're doing, and we're I believe in this, and I'll end with that, just being good stewards over what we have. And that means this was not a time for if people need help, then we should help them. It's not a time for there should be a big I and little me. It's really take the money and make sure that we're helping people that need help in this moment.
Hardy, I am really truly grateful to have had opportunity to spend this time with you this afternoon. And so I want you to sit back and breathe, because it would appear to me that you're a brother of vision. And to have spiritual alignment along with that vision is quite an admirable quality. But I want you to sit back and breathe in light of all the things that you've said. And as a young man, I want you to, when Moses asked to let his people go, he obviously had a plan.
Right.
Or if he didn't have a plan, he was following the direction.
Right.
If you sit and listen inside of you, and you see where we're headed today, you know where we came from, and and I'm sure you, as anybody else, knew that 45. If 45, if I had to wear that number when I was a young man, I would probably have wore it. But today, someone was to ask me to wear 45 today, I would say, oh no, because that to me is a demonic number. It's kind of like, they just screwed 45 up for the rest of us from now on. Yeah. But guide us, young man. Give us some words of wisdom and insight as you sit still and you hear the messages from God as a minister.
Yeah.
Take us to where we're going, man. What do you envision is our next iteration? Or if you had to tell our listeners, share something with our listeners from the pit of your truth, what would you share with us, man, in light of where we are today and where we're going? How do we get to, quote unquote, that promised land?
Right.
That sense of that leadership that is required under this climate. What would you suggest to us? What would you say to us?
Right. That's good. And it's funny you talked about Moses and the Israelites and the people. And in that moment, if you go along in that story a little longer, he got him he had to lead him through the wilderness, and and he was following God. God was going to take him to the promised land. If you know the story, there was somebody disobeyed God, and so they were stuck in the wilderness for 40 years trying to find the promised land. But at one point they were asking for food, and they said, God, we need food. And so God sent, in the Bible, it said he sent manna down, and they were able to eat. In that moment, the Bible, there's a scripture that they run over, and I'm paraphrasing. They said they took the manna, the food, and they kept it. They tried to stock up on a whole bunch of it. But what happened is the food would spoil. Because they were trying to stock up. God gave them food for that moment, but they were trying to stock up and the food would spoil. I say that to say that in this climate, it it's not we got to get rid of the me, only me attitude. I only know this. It's time for where we're going. Like you said, we just came from 45 and that was a roller coaster, just to be nice. That was a roller coaster of emotions, of things. And I think now is the time that we have to learn from that and learn from all this stuff that's going on, racial injustice and COVID and everything, and learning that it's okay to bridge out and love other people. It's okay to understand other people. But I think we have to get out and control our own narrative in these moments. We have to be okay with, I think, especially in the Black community, we need more togetherness. We have to be together more and supporting more and loving more. Check on each other. It's okay. I have a group of guys that check on me and I check on them, and we all men, nothing about it, but it's just the ownership of, hey man, I genuinely care about you. How are you doing in these moments? And I believe togetherness and really loving on each other and knowing that we are built for much greater than this. We were never built to be the tail end or underneath anything. We survived so much in our history as Black people, from slavery to all these things. We were built for greatness. And so it's time for us to now step up and step on those mantles and take the greatness that we're built for. But that's going to take togetherness, but it's also going to take bridging across bridges and with our other brothers and sisters that maybe don't look like us, right? And other people that might not have the same upbringing as us, but yet still have the same love. So I think in these moments, really trusting God, I think that, I believe that in my whole heart, trusting God is such an important piece in understanding and taking those moments. I don't care if it's 5, 10, 15 minutes, just to have some time yourself to pray. I really believe those moments, I get some of the best clarity from myself when I'm praying or to myself or having a moment just to even sit still. I get some of the best clarity of what should be done. But I believe when we get that together, love on each other, motivate each other, care for each other, and don't be scared, like I said, to really reach across the bridge and shake hands with those other brothers and sisters that maybe don't look like us, don't believe everything we believe, but are also wanting a better world. I think we will be in a better place. We're moving there, hopefully, with this transition from 45 to 46. Hopefully we're moving there. But I really think for us, it's just a time for loving and healing and peace and understanding with all of us across all races. And that's the thing, is it's a melting pot of, God didn't just create Black people. God didn't just create white people. God created everyone. And so it's for us. And I always tell people, heaven's not going to be just Black people. It's going to be a mixture. And that's what it is. And so making sure that there's a mixture of us coming together to really bridge and move forward. So peace and love and understanding, I think, are some of the best things that we need in this moment. Especially, I can't harp enough on love. In these moments, love is important because a lot of us have been hurt in these last 4 years. And a lot of us have been hurt. 2000 kicked a lot of our butts, and have lost people and have lost family and friends. And so love and care is something that's really important right now.
Artie, this has been a pleasure to me, man. It's been a pleasure to my spirit.
I appreciate it.
And I was sitting here, and as I was listening to you speak, as I said to you earlier, I knew your father. And, as a man, and who is equally the age and similar in time, I may not look it. I know I'm one of them handsome brothers still.
I thought you was 23, man.
I appreciate that gift, bro. I appreciate the love. But I ran the race with your daddy. But as a man that has sons, and as a Black man in America, man, what comes to me in my heart is a channeling of your father, is that a man could be so proud. Is to have his sons following his footsteps.
Yes, sir.
There's no greater gift for us as men.
Yes, sir.
So know that.
Yes,
and
sir.
To know that you uplift and you uphold that special place that he held dearly in his heart. You keep doing what you're doing, but most importantly, man, understand this, is that it's important to have that warrior somewhere tucked in you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that warrior could be for God. And I'm not opposed to that. reality. They asked me, why am I 3%er? They talk about the 3% with them white cats over there as a far right group, right? Well, I'm a 3%er myself, but I hold out 3% for a reason. Because I know when we came from them plantations, you know what I'm saying, man? I have family that today in my life that I remember, I don't remember it, but they tell me about the stories about us walking off of them plantations and us owning half of those plantations today.
Yeah.
What it took was that they always said, what they do out there on them streets is their business.
Mm-hmm.
But if they step up on this porch, they got to reckon it.
I got to reckon it.
You know what I'm saying? And it may be flowers or it may not be, but the gift will be reciprocal.
Yeah,
you come with love, you'll get love. If you come with something else, you may get another conversation.
I got that too.
So my brother, again, we are so grateful to have you here on Black Beat.
Thank you.
And so how could we as the Black community and Black businesses and those things, and as we conclude here, Hardy, how could we support what you're trying to do? How could the community support what? Is there a way to donate something? Give us some information on how we can get people to support your agenda.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And again, thank you for having me here. It was wonderful. And just to answer your question, I do got that warrior side of me as well. I keep it tucked down a lot, but my wife's always right there. Like she sees it come out sometimes. She's like, no, not now. But it's there. It's definitely there. But the community has been wonderful, and I love my community for what they've done, and all the things. I probably spoke just as much in this pandemic than I was before, meaning, at rallies and events and community coming out and always asking, where are you speaking? Where can I go next? One of the things you can do is, like I said, I have the nonprofit where we help our African-American kids doing, with drug and alcohol prevention, making sure the schools are not suspending our African-American kids at a high rate, making sure that the police are not, policing our kids right. So that's Highland African-American Youth Community Coalition. I know it's a lot, but it's at www.haaycc.com. All the information is there. If you want to donate, if you want to just read up on information, if you want to volunteer, there's all those good things. Also, Deshaun Hardy Speaks. That's my speaking side. The website is being built as we speak, being rebuilt as we speak. But you can always reach me there for any speaking events, engagements, anything there. I'm always open to help better my community or better people wherever I can. Even like I said, I'll do anything from sweep the floors to preach the message. Whatever you need, I just try to always be able to help. And so I appreciate this time.
Stay true, my brother. And again, welcome to this edition of Black Beat Podcast. We were proud to have Deshaun Hardy, the son of the late Dr. Hardy, on our show today. And it was a very touching experience. And truly, for you young Black men out there who are looking to model the next iteration of your life, I would suggest y'all get a hold of this brother and pull his coattail, And so with that this afternoon, with much love, my brother, and much respect, we will reach out to you again, Hardy. And again, I may reach out to you just for inspiration. If there's any opportunity to do so, my brother. And again, much respect to you and your family. Stay true to your game and your craft. You hear? And good afternoon, my brother. And thank you again for coming out and hanging out with us. You hear? Respect. Yeah. Okay, my brother. Yeah. Peace.
Take it away, feeling too good to me. Chilling all day, all in your space is where I wanna be. Here in this room, what did you do? I just can't get enough. Too caught up in your love.